downbeat. Excellent. That last piece that we just played is called High Society. It was actually featured in a movie in the mid 20th century. Satchmo was in the movie, and Big Crosby, and the whole bit. Of course, in Minnesota now, High Society may be making a completely different reference than it was in the day. But yeah, High Society, and we are the O'Dixie Rented Mules Band. And we're going to play for you a piece that I think you may recognize. This piece is late in the Dixieland genre. It is, like many of them, related to love. Yeah. and being true to one's partner and that sort of thing. It's called Ain't Misbehavin'. Those last two solos were Scott Jensen on banjo and the guy with the mustache, Keith Williams. We practice on Monday nights, and we really enjoy it. I have a hard time getting to sleep after our practices because the music is so much fun. I just go home and I keep on humming the tunes to myself and have a hard time, going to sleep. And so many of them are so familiar from back in the day, and many of them celebrate, parts of the world that are further south than we are, although we feel right now very much like those places. This place is called Basin Street Blues, and I'm guessing that we're right now experiencing the weather that they're experiencing on Basin Street at this very time. We should have some swamp fans blowing mist on us at this point.
This time last night, as Keith said, I found myself waking up at 4:30 in the morning singing the lyrics to a song in my head that we'll be singing later on tonight, which is Bourbon Street Blues. And so, yes, it stays with you.
And this one is Basin Street Blues, and John, I think, is also singing on this one. John is our band leader, trombone player, and vocalist every now and again. So, Basin Street Blues. So Dixieland has a whole bunch of different styles. There are blues styles that we just played. There are swing styles that we'll be playing. And some of the Dixieland music dips its toe into some gospel music and some favorites, but puts a different twist on them. This one is called Down by the Riverside, which is where we wish we all were right now, and get a little bit of cool air from the water, but Down by the Riverside. Such a fun piece. It should have been called Up by the Riverside. But water doesn't flow that way, I've been told. You know, it doesn't flow uphill. It doesn't flow uphill. If water flowed uphill, would we call it Yidavarg instead of gravity? I don't know. See, that's gravity backwards. See, I apologize for the rest of the evening and my patter. I just want to say that out loud. So I've noticed that even here in Minnesota, some of you have actually moved while we've been playing. That's great. The next piece is called Fidgety Feet. You're supposed to move. You can even dance. It's true. In the heat, be careful.
I saw someone.
Your feet may move. Caution, caution. first solo is mine. My name is Keith Williams.
Professor Keith Williams. Yes, Professor Keith Williams.
Mustache guy. Professor. Second one, not doctor. I actually don't have a doctorate. I am a professor, but I don't have a doctorate. So I tell my students, call me Nurse Williams, because I don't have the doctorate. Yeah, exactly. Second one was Steve Shalene over on flugelhorn. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I don't know why, how we all got together. There's a long story in sort of raking this motley crew into a single pile. And we all have this fondness of this music that we really enjoy, and we've all begun to learn a little bit about the history of it, and whether you like it or not, you might learn some of the history tonight too. The next piece that we're playing is called Muskrat Ramble, and Muskrat Ramble is just one of the standards, and by the way, ramble is a style of music, like the blues. There's a ramble, there's a stomp, there's a strut. So Muskrat Ramble is one of the styles of Dixieland. And this piece was made famous by a trombone player, a fellow by the name of Ray Gilbert Edward Ory, but he's known as Kid Ory. And he could wail on the trombone back in the teens and 20s and 30s when Dixieland was in its heyday. Of course, now it's also the teens and 20s, so Dixieland is clearly coming back. Anyway, this piece features our trombone player, John Clark, on Muskrat Ramble. So a lot of the solos in Dixieland are, of course, improvised. In some cases like that one, they are transcribed from the very famous solos from back in the day. So John was playing a transcribed solo, but we will all at some point during this evening do improvised solos. And the tradition is when somebody's done soloing, you're allowed to applaud. It's a participatory, responsive sort of thing. So we'll just take it very personally if you don't. Really, we're a very sensitive group up here. Yeah. So
Keith, I was going to say, as far as that solo, what I did is I took a recording from Wild Bill Davison back in the early 1920s where Kid Ory was playing on it, and there were 5 choruses where Kid Ory played. I took 2 of those choruses, which were the first 2 choruses I played, and put them into solo, and then went back to the chart we had written. So yes.
Ultimately, we're going to force him to play all 5 of them. Yeah. So this group is originally formed around Dixieland. But every once in a while we stretch a little bit out of that, and sometimes a lot of it out of that. This next piece was not written as a Dixieland piece traditionally. It's going to feature our drummer in this case. But you will recognize it, I believe, as a Duke Ellington piece. Duke Ellington was not a Dixieland player. He was a mid-century jazzer, more familiar from the big band era. But this is a very famous piece, very fun piece. It's called "It Don't Mean a Thing If It Ain't Got That Swing," which is a nice title because it rhymes. And Tony Gussetti is going to be playing a long extended solo on it. But I was just thinking about the fact that we are playing this piece here in the 21st century, long after the advent of the Star Wars era, and we're still in the Star Wars era. And it occurred to me that if this piece were written originally by Yoda, it would be mean a thing it does not. If that swing it ain't got. Tony Gussetti on drums, yes. John Clark on trombone, Steve Shalene on flugelhorn.
Alright, changing the setup here. A couple songs, we're going to try to factor in a couple songs each set about pop songs or New Orleans parade songs. So these are primarily pop songs. So here we go.
So while they're changing, it seems like a good time to introduce the rest of the band. I've mentioned a couple people in passing while they've been doing their solos, but on my left, your right, I forgot my mittens with the R and L on them, Steve Dix on trumpet, Lance Leopold on cornet, Keith Williams in this case on alto sax, John Clark on trombone, Steve Shalene on flugel, Tony Gussetti on the on the kit. Scott Jensen. So he's our banjo player, but we think we should spell it B-A-N-N-E-D-J-O, banjo. I think would be more appropriate. But that's just me. And currently on keyboards is Rolf Westby, and on bass is J.R. Svensson. They'll switch back and forth for these more contemporary pieces. Another piece named after a place, Kansas City. I just stomped on Steve Dick's solo. I owe him $10.
Alright, Lance.
That's it. That's it. Yeah. So this is the last piece of this set. And it's also mid-century, not Dixieland. This is another Duke Ellington piece. And we're going to, quiet it down for you so that we ease you into the break. It's called In the Mellow Tone, and it's going to feature our cornet player, Lance Leopold. pieces in Dixieland are named after places. One of the most famous places in Dixieland is Dixieland itself. This piece is called Dixie Downbeat. Well, that one cooked right along. Dixie Downbeat, yeah. The next one is also a different form and a different place. This one's a Jubilee, and it's named after the state of Alabama. Reminds me of Forrest Gump with Greenbow, Alabama. Alabama Jubilee is the name of this piece. Dix on the first solo and Keith Williams on the second one. Nicely done, nicely done. So, as I've mentioned before, this music originates in the teens and the 20s. It comes out of ragtime, it comes out of the brass band tradition in New Orleans, sneaks its way up the Mississippi River, hangs out in St. Louis for a while, makes it to Chicago for a while. And so it really spreads and becomes truly an American art form. And art forms usually talk about what's going on in the world. The next piece is called Ballin' the Jack. And that title doesn't mean anything to us now, but back in the day, in the teens, trains were steam, right? Just before diesel came out, steam engines were the thing. And the engineers called their steam engines jacks. And when the jack got going really fast, it would pass the signals along the railroad tracks really quickly. And all of those signals were ball-shaped. Ballin' the Jack is about a train blasting down the tracks. We're hoping to not go off the rails. We've got a number of pieces that we have played, for quite some time. We've been together for 6 years almost, and our number one piece used to be High Society, as we were just getting together and learning the music together and that sort of thing. And it was our number one piece mostly because it was number one in the book, and that's what we started with. Yeah, yeah. It's very thoughtful on our part. This piece, however, is one of our favorites to play because it is so appropriate for, Minnesota jazz. Big name in jazz is the state of Minnesota, of course. And this piece is a blues piece, a little bit slower piece, but it's called the Blizzard Head Blues. And I think right now we would all love for a little blizzard to show up and cool us off. Bunch of solos on that one, starting with yours truly, moving back to the piano. Oh, excuse me, I had Steve Shalene in there, then back to the piano with G.R. Svendal, and then that's what I said, Svendal. Yeah. J.R. Svendal has a couple of extra D's in it. I've asked him to buy a vowel more than once. And then some fills with Tony, our drummer. Yeah. The next piece is not a Dixieland piece at all. It comes from the era just slightly before Dixieland. It's a familiar piece to all of you. It comes from the ragtime era. Who is the most famous ragtime composer? Performer? Scott Joplin. Does anybody know Scott Joplin? The name Scott Joplin. Okay, a couple, good, excellent, very nice. So I learned this about Scott Joplin because we actually have recordings of Scott Joplin playing his music, but the recordings are prior to the invention of microphones and recordings being used for music. And so what they did is they recorded piano rolls, player piano rolls that he had cut. And the old player pianos, they would punch out holes for the notes. So you'd sit down on a piano and play them, and they'd put little notes, little holes for the notes in the paper that scrolled through. And whenever there was a hole, that made a note on the player piano. And in order to increase the volume for a piece, they would add octaves, because they just needed more notes, because there's no way to play volume on a player piano. So a lot of the recordings that we have of Scott Joplin playing are impossible for the human hands to play. But this piece is possible for our piano player, GR. It's called the Maple Leaf Rag. So the solos on that piece were Lance Leopold on corn, and of course, GR on piano. Okay. Okay. All right. So the band is in the midst of a spate of playing. We played a church service on this past Sunday morning. We played National Night Out on Tuesday. We're playing tonight. We're playing another couple of church services on Sunday, and then they're wheelbarrowing our lips home. But we are also playing at the State Fair this year at the DNR booth, DNR stage in the southeast corner of the fairgrounds. That is Tuesday the 29th. And we've got 4 sets: 10 o'clock, noon o'clock, 2 o'clock, and 4 o'clock. And this particular piece is very, very appropriate. It is beloved at the fair because we're not so far from the horse barn. This is called Livery Stable Blues. You'll find out why. one of our audience members noticed that the horse whinnies were in perfect fifths. That's mostly because they've both been drinking perfect fifths all night. So, yeah. Try the chicken. I'm here all night. So, the that piece is just too much fun. The last time we played it, actually, the police arrived, the music police, and told us we had to tone it down. It was just, we were having too much fun, and that's not allowed anymore, apparently, in the United States, so there we go. We're switching it up again to some more mid-century and sort of pop-type pieces, although this one is more brass band style. It's called Do What You Wanna, and I gotta grab an instrument for it, otherwise you're gonna have to listen to me sing.
This song is actually from the Rebirth Brass Band in New Orleans, and this is a parade song. Basically, they go down Bourbon Street blasting this thing out, and I think you'll find out why.
We're asking you not to parade out, by the way. I think the word that comes to mind when playing that piece is subtle, I think. Piece is about as subtle as the bee in the word subtle. I thought that was clever. Yeah, it's clever. You know, I understand I'm not funny. I'm merely clever, but I'm trying. Yeah. So the next piece is another Ellington. What a great composer, mid-century piano player. You might recognize this next piece when we get our band back. It's called Satin Doll. band leader John Clark on the bone solo and Keith Williams on soprano sax. I mentioned earlier that this is Hello Dolly. It was written for a musical. It was not written as a ragtime piece, and it was sort of much later than the ragtime era. By that time, Louis Armstrong was already an internationally famous ambassador for music, an ambassador for American music. And he was still performing, and he was playing pieces that were from musicals like Mac the Knife and that sort of thing. And they approached him to record Hello Dolly. And he was not at all interested in playing and recording Hello Dolly, and had to be convinced to record it in the 1960s. And when it hit and was released, it was so popular in the controversial time era of the 60s that the piece just soared to the top of the charts, and Louis Armstrong remains the oldest person ever to reach #1 on the pop music charts with Hello Dolly. My actual job is I'm a potter and a teacher of ceramics, and the other day I was moving the kiln, and I also thought Hello Dolly at that point. That was a good thing to do. So a lot of the pieces, of course, are about love and loss and wanting more love and all of that sort of stuff. And this particular piece is back in that true Dixieland tradition. I can't give you anything but love, especially with what they pay me with this band. was I Can't Give You Anything But Love, and we enjoyed it. We had some fun with that. I have to tell you, I really enjoy playing with this crew. None of us are like professional musicians, that's our main gig. I am playing with people who are really high end in their field. One of us is a retired surgeon, some are in IT as accomplished people, engineers. They're just people at their top of their field. I like to play in the mud, and I also color. Yeah, and I'm just glad that they let me play with them. We're going to do a Bill Bailey, Won't You Come Home, Bill Bailey, and with apologies, I'm on vocals on this piece. Come home, Bill Bailey, won't you come home? I've moaned the whole night long. Oh, I'll do the cooking, honey, I'll pay the rent. I know I done you wrong. Remember that rainy evening I threw you out with nothing but a fine-tooth comb. Way too much energy. We've got to take it down just a little bit. We're going to take it down just a little bit. Another piece named after a place. You might have heard of the Wabash Cannonball. We're not playing that. I've heard of the Wabash River. I've heard of the Wabash Bridge. Did you know that the Wabash River is near the New River in West Virginia? Yeah. Apparently West Virginians are fairly pedestrian when it comes to naming things. You know, hey, there's a new river. What should we call it? How about the new river? Good, we got it. We're gonna play a blues piece called the Wabash Blues. That was a nice boozy rendition of Wabash Blues.